Corporate mergers. The art of buying companies like they were Pokemon cards to be resold. Something the games industry is awfully familiar with these days. It doesn't matter if you don't know what to do with the acquired firm, all that counts in the end is the appearance of growth. It might be a bad long-term decision, but it looks good on the balance sheet right now. So why bother with a vision? By the time it implodes, you and most of your investor friends will have already made their bags. The internet meanwhile will gleefully look on as you buy your 10th company. Speculation springs up. Who gets to be the lucky one to be consumed next? And then, what should be a nightmare for the people up top turns into one for the individual. No, this video isn't about Tencent, NetEase, Microsoft or the AI bubble for that matter, although it could have been about any of the dipshits involved in there too. No, this video is about Nordic Games, better known as THQ Nordic, hated by the name Embracer Group, renamed to Middle-earth and Friends and ultimately spun off as Fellowship Entertainment. Because where we're going, there are no friends to be made. Certainly not with the man responsible for the closure of dozens of studios, extensive layoffs and cancelled projects. The CEO of the Embracer Group, Lars Wingfors, who only gets to keep his extensive real estate portfolio,
it's not a rich man's thing, is it?
The cars he stole from the Bungie garage.
Have you got all your dream cars? No.
Face no consequences and most importantly keep his control over the company. So, how'd he get here? Well, at the age of 11, Lars already saw huge successes by selling comics through mail order, and 4 years later, with the help of a local shop owner, had the biggest comic shop business in Sweden. However, to the games industry's detriment, he then set his sights on video games, later resulting in the brick and mortar store chain Nordic Games. Sadly, at the turn of the millennium, Lars was unhappy with his margins. Time to find a sucker buyer. Luckily, Gameplay LLC shows interest and buys the company for £8 million worth of their own stock. Unannounced to Lars though, the monopoly money was soon to be worthless, because the dot-com bubble was about to pop. As you might imagine, Gameplay was no more after that, but Nordic Games survived. Lars and his board purchased the now deeply unprofitable company back for a single Swedish krona, that's 11 cents. What do you do with your self-admitted unprofitable company? Correct, you bring in a venture capitalist to squeeze out whatever is left. Naturally, Lars immediately tries again with a new venture called Game Outlet Europe. At their core, they were reselling pallets full of games at bargain bin prices to retailers, consisting of leftover stock from publishers. Though, Game Outlet, they had an issue. There wasn't enough shovelware to fill the pallets with. So what better time than to resurrect the corpse of Nordic Games to fill that gap with "We, copyright infringement intended, sing." And the groundwork for the upcoming Death March would be laid here. It's time to play Pac-Man on a corporate scale. The Austrian-based publisher Jowood Productions was the first one to be gutted for its valuable organs, subsequently renamed to Nordic Games GmbH, with a small number of staff being retained. Nordic's nostalgic roots are upheld by buying the Scandinavian branch of the store chain Game, 55 stores, branding and website included. THQ and Atari have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcies, and Nordic Games showed up with the shopping cart. Grimlore Games gets set up alongside the resurrected Rainbow Studios. Next up, DTP Entertainment and parts of Codename Panzers. More franchises from 2015 games Bit Composer, the rest of Codename Panzer and Neocore games are up for grabs. What isn't up for grabs are the 55 stores Nordic bought because they all got liquidated this year. The year Lars realized the value of the hulled out corpse of THQ. So he promptly strapped it over Nordic Games to create THQ Nordic, the first of many operative groups that will have the ability to work mostly independent within the parent company, including but not limited to making their own acquisitions. Wingfors then shit-talked to Polygon. Looking at the bankruptcy, it came from a kind of mismanagement by using a lot of debt.
Foreshadow literary device and
The company proceeds to go public with a valuation of $190 million, financing THQ Nordic's latest intellectual property buyouts, on top of the creation of Mirage Game Studios and Foxglove Studios. THQ Nordic tells their employees they want nothing more than to have one big THQ family. So they adopt Pieces Interactive, Black Forest Games Experiment 101 and the rights to Red Rogers. And like every good family, they raise capital to expand their operations to buy more children. If the old THQ was the prime example of how a game business can completely collapse, THQ Nordic surely is a textbook on how to build a new one, said GamesIndustry.biz, as they crowned Lars one of the People of the Year. Lars then continued, "I told everyone that we would do acquisitions and organically invest in our own development. Maybe I have a different idea of organic investment than Mr. Wingforce, but buying Coffee Stain, Bugbear Entertainment, Handy Games, moreover Koch Media, which outgrew THQ the same year, how do I put this? It doesn't strike me as particularly organic." I mean, given the rate at which THQ is growing, is there not a risk that such a vast publishing business could be unsustainable? Wingforce doesn't believe so. Oh well, no more questions to be asked then. You have to take his word at that point. Time for Atari to get another knock from the THQ mob then, to cough up some more franchises. After all, while it might seem like THQ is snapping up any properties it can get its hands on without logic or reason, Wingforce maintains that we have a very clear strategy of what we want. Yeah, like Time Splitters. Really love what they did with the new Legacy Arcane, and don't even get me started on Deus Ex. Thank God Lars knew what he wanted. Hearing the news of everyone calling the business THQ Nordic, even though the parent company's name is THQ Nordic AB, easily confused with the operating group THQ Nordic GmbH, causes the name change of the parent company THQ Nordic AB to Embracer Group. I hope that made sense. Obviously because they embrace great companies, great people, great ideas. Adding they'll save the other 200 possible names like Irresponsible Investment AB for the future. Sorry, that was a bit mean, considering the fact that they don't even use aggressive debt like loans or bonds, creating a safer long-term environment for all their great employees that don't even have to worry about their balance sheet for the next paycheck. They sure don't. Not even the head PR guy that hosts an Ask Me Anything in the company's name on 8chan of all places. I'm truly thankful that guy doesn't have to worry about his paycheck. Hopefully every developer loses their job in his stead. Anyway, the money you could have saved from this guy's salary was sadly not used to buy the new operating groups Group by Kansas Game Invest or any of the other studios listed here. Rather, Foxglove Studios are now on their own. Very reasonable indeed. I too hate people that make video games. Acclaimed developers of the Metro games along with many others embrace their fate. But these are small fry, at least compared to Saber Interactive and Decca Games, both of which were coerced by an abstract concept called money into joining Embracer, just like Lars, who allegedly wrote himself a check by reacquiring Quantic Lab. Yes, reacquiring. While the news reports may have you believe this was a new acquisition, it really wasn't. Let's go back to the old Nordic Games website, and surprise surprise, Quantic Lab is right here above Game Outlet Europe. Even stranger, when you scroll down the press release, the seller is revealed to be Nordic Games AB. To put this into perspective, the former Nordic Games is now selling companies to the current Nordic Games Embracer Group, one of which was coincidentally founded by Lars Wingforce and the other one was owned by him through the old Nordic Games AB. Why you would sell a company that you already owned to your other company, which is supposed to be one and the same, I don't know. Who knows what the reason might be. Sometimes you just have to get creative when you only make $81 an hour. Wait, I just got another one of those creative ideas. What if employees had to work overtime to get a raise? People who are willing to spend more time at the office or work on weekends without asking to be paid extra are favored. People who don't do that but just do their job as is asked from the job description, they're simply not seen as good employees. Sounds good, but what if we just made up hours instead? I mean, we could double, heck triple the hours worked through that way. Why didn't I come up with this sooner? I had to lie in those documents many times about the number of employees working on a project. In the reports sent to customers, there was a certain number of hours that had to be met. And although the actual number was 8 hours of lead tester and 0 hours of tester, I was putting 8 hours of lead tester and 40 hours of tester for 5 people, so 40 hours stolen. And the test hour was generally paid from 10 euros up, so it was thousands of euros a month. You're just told, look, those are the resources you have to calculate by the number of people you have in the table. That's what you have to put. Some employees tried to draw attention to the irregularities, but they were reapproached for demoralizing their colleagues and making too much noise. These quotes, they give me a spark. Might as well charge them for speaking out too. Quantic Lab employees sign a strict confidentiality clause at hiring, 10,000 euros if you harm the company's image. It's a relatively vague clause and it allows the company to define almost anything. Okay, we might have the perfect business model here, but there's this virus going around. Can't have that get in the way now, can we? Several employees revealed on various online platforms that the employer forced them to come to the office during the quarantine, and there were outbreaks that no one officially declared. People were getting sick on their heads in the office, but the firm didn't care about the employees. The big bosses were often screaming and swearing at their employees or moving them on labs and unpleasant projects as punishments. Threats of blows with the monitor in the head were bonuses. As you may have guessed from the talk about quality assurance, these are all accusations leveled against Quantic Lab. It's always the companies with Quantic in their name, right, David Cage? Seems to be cagey about the topic. By the way, I don't think that CD Projekt Red, which is the client most of these employees are referring to here, is a victim by any means. If you don't value quality assurance, you outsource it. They got exactly what they paid for, in my opinion. Also no, Quantic Lab isn't the reason why Cyberpunk released in the state it did. First of all, nobody forced them to release it in this state, and the idea that a tiny corporation like CD Projekt Red was somehow not aware or did little to no internal testing is preposterous. This year, Embracer announced the acquisition of Randy Pitchford's USB stick. Google Randy Pitchford USB stick for more information, as well as EasyBrain, Board Game Titan Asmodee, and Dark Horse Media, all 4 of them being sworn in as operative groups by the dark forces of Embracer. Unlike its peers, Embracer Freemode is established as an operative group made up of previous and new acquisitions. Notable ones include Middle-earth Enterprise and Collector's Sleep Paralysis Demon limited run games. Over in Japan, Square Enix is desperate to find a home for their Western studios that have been unable to fulfill its very reasonable expectations. So Square Enix commits to human trafficking for $300,000 and leaves them embraced, marking the establishment of the final operative group, Crystal Dynamics Eidos Montreal. Thank you for coming to Embracer's annual shareholder meeting. Today I'm here to announce that I just lost my $2 billion deal with the Saudi government. Sadly, Saudi Arabia didn't reward my unwavering disloyalty to human rights. Hey Lars, just wondering, differing opinions on what? Slavery, LGBT rights, pineapple pizza? Come on, say it, you fucking coward. To make up for that, we will now roll out our new AI policy. But don't worry, everyone has to go through layoffs. Deep down though, we here at Embracer feel for you. But this is just what we have to do to win. Consider for a second how much of an agonizing process this was for us, putting your name from one spreadsheet into the other. Employees these days, I can generate a game trailer that looks nothing like the actual product, and they expect me to keep them around. I too am an engineer, a prompt engineer that is. I just have to pretend that AI requires no talent while insisting it can be mastered, and that limitations are a bug, not a necessity of the creative process. Thanks to artificial intelligence, we can automate the fun parts of producing art, like having ideas, which every creative person famously has not enough of. Utopia is when only boring manual cleanup work is left to the humans. I might be entirely dependent on a chatbot that frequently tells me to kill myself, but all the companies are embracing it and seeing practically zero efficiency gains. I mean, at this point, we at Embracer have no choice but to adapt. With a human-centric approach to AI, that is. by letting each and every one of you help us build the future through increases in your electricity bill and decreases in your life expectancy. That way we can forge a path together to maximize shareholder value, all to create some temporary construction jobs in the desert. That's the human-centric approach for ya. How dare you suggest we're feeding off other people's work? Look, we even licensed some of it. That makes it okay, because material conditions in a capitalist society would never force a person to take such a deal against their will. Especially not when jobs in those same industries are under threat right now. Oh. But everyone's getting inspired. You can't create something original to begin with. Yeah, I mean, I too am frequently inspired by the entirety of the internet and then press all of that into an average to replicate the most generic content imaginable, because that's what the majority of the training data was made up of. It's almost what makes human creativity special, is the ability to filter the things you see and make decisions based on your own life experience. Sorry, what were we talking about again?
Alexa, I just crushed that round.
I knew you had it in the bag. You are goated with the sauce, Phasra. What about 1,000 tissue boxes this time?
Embracer ceases all operations in Russia through the divestment of selected assets from Saber Interactive, reads the headline. Framing it that way might almost make you forget they actively profited off of those same assets for 2 years. Maybe crippling debt forced their hands, not the goodness of their hearts. But that's just a theory. A game theory. No, it's just virtue signaling. If Embracer really cared about such things, they would have divested Crazy Labs years ago, because it's located in Tel Aviv, Israel. You simply don't buy Israeli businesses if you care about any of this, certainly not one that makes their money with hyper-casual slop targeted at 8-year-olds and by extension their parents' credit cards, whose current CEO is powered by AI brainworms and his 8 years of experience as a software developer in the Israeli Defense Force. What type of software? Well, if the current tech is anything to go by, bad software. Not bad as in Microsoft made it, I mean that too, but bad as in making crying baby noises to shoot people in the head type bad. But it's okay, they were clearly hiding a hospital under their feet. This is all depressing. Well, wouldn't you believe it? Sadi Schließer also has a solution for that. AI therapy. I meant the brainworms literally. What I want to show without a doubt with this video is that management was very much aware they were overspending. Embracer paid upfront, purely in cash, 3.5 billion euros on its acquisitions. If you add promised bonuses onto that, it brings us to 4.5 billion euros. Adding on top of that, all of the share capital, excluding the bonuses, brings us to 5 billion. In the end, if you add everything together, we end up with 7.5 billion euros being spent on acquisitions. Frankly, pick the number you want, because they're all too low. In the end, Embracer only disclosed roughly 1/3 of all acquisition prices. Therefore, it's very unlikely that Embracer even had the money to buy all of these companies, let alone sustain them once they were acquired. In 2022 alone, Embracer's expenses exceeded operating profit by a factor of 7. Add to that the fact that Embracer often paid a premium on its acquisitions, or as Embracer likes to call it, a surplus intangibles recognized on acquisition, and you get the recipe for a disaster. Management had to have known what was coming, because in 2022 they released management adjusted EBIT numbers. Earnings before interest and taxes that transformed losses of 1.2 billion euros into 4.5 billion in profit, and the cumulative EBIT went from 1.1 billion in profit to 13.7 billion in profit. Lars bet his house of cards on an investment that never came through and then just proceeded to buy Asmodee anyway. He willingly bet the lives of thousands of employees just to keep his organic growth oxymoron alive, just to have anything to present to the investors. I'd go as far as to say Embracer often just bought companies to make press releases out of them. You know, I was pretty rough on Lars in this video. And it's because I had to read his self-serving quotes one too many times during the production of all of this. Here's a man that tells his employees to not worry about the balance sheet while actively readjusting the numbers in said balance sheet. Indeed dragging assets and flashy new acquisitions, adding the newly acquired firm's earnings, but not the payments due on that same acquisition, delaying the inevitable and doing it for as long as possible to hide the fact that he's burning through cash. What gets me the most is there was never as much of an apology. He couldn't mutter the words, "I'm sorry." There was an acknowledgement of criticism, yes, but there was no apology to the people whose lives he gambled with, some of which had to go through incredible hardships due to his actions. Even now, after the company is going to split into 3 different entities with Asmodee getting the brink of the dead, Lars will have significant control over all of them. But I'm sure having an even more confusing company structure will lead towards a great future for the 2 people that now make up Crystal Dynamics. They, alongside all the others, are fortunate enough to be in the square of the company that doesn't even have a logo yet, even though the restructuring announcing it has been going on for over a year now, and that announced last month that 23 people would be losing their jobs. Oh.